I'm Ronald Angel. I'm a civil engineer from the University of Michigan, a Bachelor of Science. Also, I'm a scientist and an engineer. Um, I've been a member of Architects and Engineers from 911truth.org, and I'm also a member of American Society of Civil Engineers. And the American Society of Civil Engineers does not go along with what has recently been discovered as the controlled demolition. There was a court case in May whereby the case was brought by one of the surviving relatives, or I'm sorry, one of the surviving relatives of someone that had been jettisoned out of one of the towers, and they did testing on what was remaining of his son and found military nanothermite. So I've been a very outspoken individual for 9/11 Truth. Dr. Lieutenant Colonel Bob Bowman spoke out at the University of Pacific in 2007. He was actually, before Star Wars, he was head of the missile shield to protect the United States. At that time, it was to use missiles shooting down other missiles. He said it was Richard Cheney that planned 9/11. So I survived a genocide in Chicago. We thought we could bring impeachment proceedings and indictments against Bush, Cheney, Rumsfeld, and Rove. Karl Rove was indicted. He's recently been pardoned by the current administration. Um, they used poison in the water. I distilled my water to survive. The dog food in 2003 in Illinois was poisoned. I called my vet. Why is my dog throwing up? She said, all the dogs are throwing up. And so she said, make all the dog food in a, rice, beans, dried beans, and chicken and vegetables. And that saved my life. Between the water distiller from Sears Roebuck Company and making my food from old dried lentils and other beans, I lived through the genocide. I witnessed many people, many of my friends that died. The best thing you could have is a water distiller, and also dried food. And I actually had to look for dusty cans because the commercial grocery store, the Dominick's and the Jewel's grocery store, were attacked by what Dr. Lieutenant Colonel Bob Bowman said was Blackwater XE, which is Eric Prince's company from Michigan, and Wackenhut, which is now G4S. They actually came in and did these psychological operations. And I just can't thank people enough for being on this. Also, they use sarin gas, I was told, in Oak Park, Illinois. I have been doing a lot of research in this, and it seems the seeds of destruction were laid just as what you had said. You were vaccine injured. I have a document from the National Library of Medicine, January 2020, influenza vaccine and respiratory virus interference among Department of Defense personnel during the 2017 and 2018 influenza season. And I sent as a group chat message a photograph that the flu vaccine increases your chance of getting COVID-19 by 36%. So what was done, obviously the military came back from their service. They had spouses or family members that they were visiting. This, the seeds of destruction were laid. Basically, my father was in World War II. All of my uncles were in World War II. And they basically do what's called, you sign a piece of paper when you go into the service that they can do anything to you. It's a consensual form. You have no choice. Now, the Health and Human Services has a law that civilians can reject based on what, we can, based on the Nuremberg Code 6.1 and 6.3, we can reject any medical treatment. And they call it non-consensual human experimentation law. And I actually have the federal laws on this. So they can't touch you. They can't test you. If you are to get tested, it's your prerogative if you want to put your saliva in a cup And I did see that the FDA said they should be not invasively testing you, because these tests that they're giving the people in the UK, they're laced with seeds of destruction as well. And the tests themselves are causing the virus. And I posted this to the group prior, and I posted it on my Facebook page. So, you know, it's just like a Trojan horse. Here's 500,000 tests from China. We're going to give them to you, the United States, and you're going to test your people. And the test itself is going to seed the virus within your population. You know, how stupid could people be? So that's what I wanted to point out. And I sent you that document, and I'm sorry about your vaccine injury, Shelley. I've done extensive research. There's been damages awarded by the Department of Justice. So I'll send all that to the group later in emails. And I've posted it on my Facebook page, as well as the International Criminal Court group that I have on Facebook. And thank you very much. I'd like to mention several documents that former FBI agents and former children and grandchildren of Manhattan Project scientists gave me. One of them I shared in our private chat. Don Friedman got a FOIA request in 2006 from the U.S. Army. I suggest everyone in this meeting download it. It's a FOIA request on pulsed microwave mind control, also known as silent subliminal sound. They were experimenting in the 90s on how dolphins communicated, and they were able to hit the inner ear bone with pulsed microwave. And then we began seeing cordless phones appear. That's a lot what's going on. Another FOIA request was the document on Sandia National Labs report out of Oak Ridge National Labs, Lawrence Livermore National Labs, and New Mexico. So I'd like everyone to take a look at that. And if you were to search on YouTube, Rodolfo Linas, R-O-D-O-L-F-O, Linas, L-L-I-N-A-S. He is a Nazi brain scientist that was in Bogota. I saw all of his documents from the 60s. He appeared in the United States at New York University sometime around the 80s or 90s, and he advises the NSA. There's a very, very short little you go in from the inside.
Hey, Ron, we'll leave a link for that in the description, because I don't think people are going to be able to see it from here. But if you could just kind of briefly summarize it for us, and then
yes.
We'll leave a link for
it. They're using nanostructures to go into the brain and plate out filters, or plate basically like a crystal radio in the brain, and then they're able to use 5G and directed energy to fully control the brain. And so what happens is, as you're ingesting some of these, you know, fast foods that have been forced upon us, like sodium benzoate in the soda pop and in the McDonald's food that these people have been eating, they then turn on the pulse microwave, and these products have already gone into your brain fissures, and they're able to, they code out as plaques inside the brain. Well, these vaccines that they're looking to force on the world will break the blood-brain barrier. And if you go to Facebook and type in Sandia National Labs report, in 2006, the 3 national labs were working on full remote control of the human brain and monitoring. And I sent all these documents within this group chat. And as one last message, I'd like to give the laws to protect everybody. We're in the United States. We have a constitution, no matter what these people say. We also have U.S. Code Title 18, Section 241, deprivation under color of law. I got a message from the Department of Justice to my email saying nobody can violate our civil rights. Europe is protected by the Nuremberg Code, as well as the U.S., as well as Israel. All countries after World War II signed on to the Nuremberg Code and the Helsinki Doctrine. All doctors cannot force medical treatment on anybody. Canada signed it too. There is no way around it. So there will be repercussions if somebody tries to force any form of testing. They're lacing the tests with the coronavirus. That was in many UK papers. Why would anybody take Chinese tests given by a billionaire and then test their people? It's basically lacing seeds of destruction in your population. And that's all I'd like to say. But please have a look at Rodolfo Linos, Wires in the Brain. That was given to me by a Belgian victim of a very tortured victim back in 2010. She sent that to me. There was a whole group trying to resist what you and what all of us are doing today. They were trying to resist, but we didn't have Zoom back then. We just had Ning sites. Many of the Ning sites have been brought down, but there is a wonderful one called Peace Pink. And
Okay.
thank you very much.
Thank you, Ron.
I can tell you. This is Ron Angel. Can you hear me?
Yes, Rob.
Yes, I have a friend, Dave Case, and Dave Case lives off grid. He said there is nowhere on the planet you can go. He said that they hit it with a plasma and then follow it up with pulse microwave. That was a lot of the bunker buster technology that was developed in the 90s. So basically, they can send a radio signal through the earth. Your best bet is to carry some EMF meter at all times. Steve Jobs had an application for the iPhone when he was alive that measured, it's called a data logger, an EMF data logger. It's basically, you can buy them. They've come down in price. You can put an app on your phone, but it's resource, it draws a lot of resources. So you really want, you can buy a used phone and put an EMF data logger. EMF is electromotive force. You catch them when they're doing your radiate with, this is a very old, this detected nuclear radiation, but it also detects EMF because there's a magnet in here. It's in an old format of rads per hour. Before World War II and before the first atomic bomb, it was 0. Right now, today, it's at about 1.5 rads an hour. About a month ago, it was at 70 rads an hour. Everything will die after 50 rads an hour. Now the new EMF measuring is not the same as this. I also measure radiation with this. And I think I think Celeste had mentioned, God forbid, we're subject to depleted uranium or an atomic explosion. But, there are things you can do. You can go underground. That's where Dave Case built an off-grid house, and he lives underground. And he's quite free. And he created a CD, and he sent it to me. He's an electrical engineer, and he worked on in the 80s on the heads up flying of a plane with thought-driven infrared
Like
sensors.
the heads-up display.
After the project, he said they were going to put this in satellites. He said there's nowhere you can go on the planet because at any one time there's 30 satellites hooking up to us on a neuron level. So may
I interject? I highly recommend the website antennasearch.com to go to the question. If you go to antennasearch.com, you can see how many antennas, towers, cell towers and whatnot are in your vicinity. And less is more. Less is more. I think if you're sensitive or you want to be around less of it, or if you can see the writing on the wall, it's better to get rural in this kind of environment. That's all.
about what Lynn Sergala, the late Lynn Sergala told me. We have what's called over-the-horizon systems all over the planet, and the military would know about this. These are also known as HARP. There's not just the one in Gacona, Alaska. There's one in Vieques, Puerto Rico. There's one in Peru. There's one in Tibet, China. And they send and receive signals. And they've got it set up in such a way there's very little energy loss. So say the send station in Vieques, Puerto Rico sends to Tibet, China. They run 3 sinusoidal waves, and these waves build upon each other where there's almost no energy loss. So what we think is the cell towers and the satellites, and also we have to remember there's a weaponized power grid. But these over-the-horizon radar systems are well documented. People know them as HARP. And the energy transmission increases with the sprays in the sky. When you see the chemtrail sprays, that's increasing the electrostatic conductivity of the atmosphere. And I have a plasma ball over here. It's just like a plasma ball. So the more sprays in the sky, the more chance of spontaneous combustion. These towers, we have a system to search the internet for learning, for talking, for wonderful things. Unfortunately, the NSA, in a very ruthless company called the MITRE Corporation out of McLean, Virginia, which funded all the different mind control for 70 years. They were the former paperclip Nazis brought over after World War II. They were called the aviary, like the birds. If you want to search the aviary, you will find out that these were the Nazis that were brought by Prescott Bush to Connecticut. And then they were brought all over the universities to build this system at UCSB, they were building a virtual sexual reality program. That's disgusting. And at Stanford, none of that should have been done, but it was done. And they used the MITRE Corporation, MITRE.org. They were the former Department of Defense Jason brain scientists. The people that were tortured in Auschwitz and all the camps were tortured by Joseph Mengele. He wanted to find out why twins could read each other's thoughts. Well,
Okay.
they artificially were able to simulate it. It's called silent subliminal sound, also known as pulse microwave. 70 years, 80 years later, we've got the same problem.